Mouth noises. Eaty stuff. Yum.
Okay, I've put some thumbs on Drive, where they usually
Thank
are.
you. Much appreciated. So apparently we're live. Hi.
Hey, what's up, world?
I don't see any citizens yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were just kind of hanging out there, as we usually do. But if we're going to get started, we might as well get started, right? Because
There we go. It's coming through now. I've got it. We're going.
okay, cool. We're at some point we're going to know that we're live. At another point, we're going to know that we're not live.
We'll figure it out live.
Yeah, this is the great thing about this show is that we just figure things out as they go. And in fact, we're figuring it out today on September 3rd. So glad to have you all here. My name is Jared. I'm going to be your host for tomorrow, today. And then we've also got Ryan and Dutta in the mix as well.
Hello.
And
Hello, everyone.
as usual, we have got a lot to talk about for this week because there has been just a few things that have happened over the past week, and spaceflight seems to just never end, does it? So to go ahead and get started, Ryan, why don't we go to you because, SpaceX always at the top of our list of things to talk about, and SpaceX always gives us a bunch of things to talk about at the top of our list. So as we're saying hello to everybody in the chat room, hopefully the chat room's doing good today. Don't forget to chime in throughout the show. And Ryan, I'm going to go ahead and hand it right over to you.
Yeah, I mean, SpaceX is always up to something. I'm going to kick it off here with Ship 25. This is the Starship that's slated to fly the next integrated flight test, which, fingers crossed, should be soon in the next few weeks or so. Probably not going to be next week. We still are expecting it to roll out, get stacked, have the FTS systems all armed and safed and all of that jazz. So we're expecting a pretty similar process. In terms of that side of things from the first integrated flight test, and following IFT1's kind of timeline from this point, a flight probably wouldn't be next week following those timelines. We had a sneaking suspicion they might try roll this out last week, maybe trying to follow that timeline as well, but as you can see here from Jack Breyer's photos of its new livery which it got, there is it's very much not at the launch site, it's still at the production site, and calling it a livery, I will be honest, is maybe a little bit disingenuous because it's just got a few stickers on it now. It's got the SpaceX logo and S25 on each side there in front of the flaps. So maybe it's a bit disingenuous to call that a livery. It's got 3 new stickers, but it just kind of polishes the ship off a little bit, makes it more. As
SpaceX goes, that's a livery.
Yes. You've also got the tiles on the other side, so I guess it gives it a little bit of a interesting design. But that's all we've got from Ship 25 at the moment as of this week, because it's pretty much ready to go. It just needs to roll to the pad, get flight termination system or stacked first rather. They'll probably do a wet dress rehearsal or at least some tanking tests, then destack it, get the flight termination system armed, put it back on top of the booster, and then send it to Hawaii, hopefully by the end of the flight. So that's pretty much all that we've got from Ship 25 this week at Starbase. That's it doesn't sound like a lot, but this is kind of the last step before rollout. This is just the final pieces of the cake in order to put it in the oven and then start baking.
Yeah, so speaking of baking, Ship 25 certainly will do that if it makes it all the way to entry interface, let me tell you. So it is starting to look like, Ryan, your prediction of September is going to be pretty spot on with that there, if the progress continues. Are there any sort of big hangups at the moment that we should be aware of, or is it going to be smooth sailing once regulatory issues and hurdles are crossed?
I think it's going to be pretty smooth sailing. I think the two biggest, when you say like regulatory issues or legal things, the two biggest things that come to most people's minds is obviously the launch license, the FAA doing their investigation into what happened with Flight Test 1, and then there's also that weird legal challenge about environmental stuff against the FAA and SpaceX or something like that to do with them harming the environment or whatever. That legal challenge is just riddled with mistakes and is a bit rubbish, to be honest. So I don't believe that will cause much of an issue. In terms of the FAA side of things, we don't really get an insight into the FAA. They will be conducting their investigation alongside SpaceX. SpaceX will already be aware of many of the things that the FAA will say in the I think it's a mishap report is the official terminology. So there's a very strong chance, in my opinion, that whilst the FAA have been saying to SpaceX like, that's a bit dodgy, you should fix that for the next flight, SpaceX have been actively working on that and integrating that into the next generation of vehicles and the launch pad infrastructure as they've been fixing it. So I don't feel like the FAA, come say September 10th, let's just pull a random date out of thin air, they'll just dump on SpaceX a whole bunch of things they were unaware of, and then they've got to sit there for months to get the pad ready to fit the FAA spec. SpaceX, I think, I'm 99% sure SpaceX is already aware of the majority of the things that the FAA are going to tell them that they need to fix before IFT2. So I think it's going to be a case, just like the first flight test, that when the FAA drop that report, they'll be ready for the launch license straight away. They'll drop the launch license and they'll be ready to launch in a few days' time.
Gotcha. As Bennett is saying in our chat room, launch date September 10th confirmed. So yeah, if we're gonna start, Ryan said it, so that's why it's gonna happen. If anyone's gonna start rumors, let it be us. And we'll just say that NASA's spaceflight caused the rumor. With that, there, we'll blame NSF on that front for it. But yeah, it does. Again, I'm gonna repeat this probably till the demise of Booster 9 and Ship 25, and that is that it seems like SpaceX is doing so much better of a job in terms of actually preparing their vehicle and understanding that maybe it should be a little more on point with being a flight test as opposed to a hashtag full send. It seems like they really are kind of putting in the homework and making sure that things are going right with this year. So good, glad to see all the boxes that need to be checked are coming along with that. Also, that the environmental lawsuit is really actually riddled with so many things that are completely incorrect that it basically takes itself out of being a realistic lawsuit and kind of tosses itself into the trash. So, yeah, I don't know what was being attempted there, but the folks who set that up definitely did not do their due diligence and pretty much lost the credibility of trying to figure things out on that front. So, yeah, that's kind of just saying the least.
In genuine SpaceX style, the first one was a turd that got a bunch of data, and now they're putting some polish on it and straightening out their issues.
Yes, and as we all know, you can polish a turd. So, Mythbusters.
That's not what I'm implying. That's not what I'm implying.
I know.
Not
just joshing with you there, Doug. It is most certainly a shiny rocket. So we'll put it that way. With it there, so
go grab the WD-40.
Yeah, boy, I feel like the comment section is going to get very bad.
I stuck my foot in it in that one.
Yeah, well, you tried to polish it and then you just accidentally stepped on it and slipped. So, but it's okay. We still, at least nobody put it in a bag and lit it on fire on your porch. All right, so. That wasn't the only thing we were dealing with SpaceX over the past week, right, Ryan? We also had some friends coming home.
Well, we haven't had anyone come home just yet because of the weather, everyone's favourite Floridian weather with hurricanes and storms and whatnot. So I believe that, what's the date today? September 3rd. I believe they may be undocking today if they haven't already. But Crew 7, between the last show and this show, did arrive at the International Space Station. I just realised I'm just gonna skip forward a little bit where the exciting stuff happens. Just give it a little. Come on, there we go. Crew Dragon Endurance, I believe, Endurance or Endeavour, one of the two, docked to the Harmony module of the International Space Station. I can't remember. I think on orbit at the moment we have Endeavour and Endurance, One of them's doing Crew 6, one of them's doing Crew 7. I don't know which one's which. I'm going to find out live on air.
It's Endurance.
Okay? It's Endurance.
Endurance is Crew 7.
Is it? Okay. Let's just check. Where are you? Yes, it's as I said, Dragon Endurance. Jared, I don't know why you ever doubted me. That docked to the International Space Station Harmony module on the 27th of August, which was about 7 days, about a week ago. So there you go.
Ryan is in rare sorts today.
That you can tell. I did my just like the environmental thing. I did my due diligence into Crew 7. So
Ryan.
there you go. That happened, and Jasmine Mugbeli, Andreas Mogensen, Satoshi Furukawa, and Konstantin Borisov. See, I remember the crew names are now on board the International Space Station alongside Crew 6 and Soyuz MS-22 or 23.
By the
Which
way,
one?
I just want to point out that this crew is mostly not NASA.
It's all not
Ja-
NASA, isn't it?
Jasmine is this commander is from NASA, but
Oh, okay.
Andres is from the European Space Agency. Satoshi's from JAXA, and then Konstantin's from Roscosmos. So only one of the 4 astronauts on board is actually a NASA astronaut, and that's very interesting. I don't think that's actually happened before, both in just flying on a Crew Dragon, let alone flying on a American vehicle.
Actually, it has
Oh.
happened before.
Oh,
Everyone's favorite vehicle, the Space Shuttle, has done it before on STS-100 when we had 4 Americans from NASA, Chris Hadfield from the Canadian Space Agency, and Umberto Guidoni, sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, from ESA,
Yeah,
and then
Umberto Guidoni.
Yuri Lonchikov from Russia there as the 5th mission specialist on STS-100. So it has happened before, but in my opinion, in terms of percentages, I think this is the most diverse crew because there's only 4 crew members on board and each crew member is of a different nationality. So in my opinion, this does make it the most, international crew there's been just because the space shuttle could seat so many more people and there was a much larger percentage of Americans on board.
yeah, that's what I was trying to imply,
Yeah.
which is the fact that this is, of the astronauts on board, only one of the 4 is an American from NASA. And so that means the majority of the crew is actually not from NASA, and this is the first time I can recall a mission where, specifically a NASA mission, where the NASA astronauts do not outnumber the astronauts that are actually on board of the vehicle. So I just thought that was fascinating. Like, here we are in that international age of exploration of space, and just doing our thing as we often do. So very exciting to see that actually happening for real.
Yeah, it's and also when we have axial missions and ESA mixing stuff in there, seat barters and all of this stuff. There's many different agreements that are making things like this possible, and I suspect we may see something like this again, especially with JAXA collaboration and Roscosmos collaboration. Yeah, it's pretty cool to see, and it's something that the commercial space age, as it were, allows us to do.
Yeah, and kind of the exact opposite of that is that Crew 8 is going to have 3 NASA astronauts and 1
Yes.
Roscosmos astronaut. So kind of getting back at it, and that's as far as we've got right now in terms of crews. Of course, we do know that we're going to have more happening at that time period. But yeah, we'll have to see. And then once Boeing's Starliner starts flying as well, when it starts flying in the 2100s, we're going to definitely be able to see hopefully an even better mix of crews on that front with them. So yeah, just really cool that we're doing this. So hey, here we are, out and about, actually doing the thing that we said we were going to do, and the more people, the better, as far as I'm concerned. So, very exciting, very exciting with that there. So, all right. So, does that wrap up our sort of SpaceX
That's
Our
pretty much all
SpaceX
they've done in the last
minutes.
week. Of course, I think they've launched a Starlink or something like that. They launched a thing for the Space Development Agency of the U.S. Space Force. That's about
Yep.
it, really. It's just,
I wanted to
standard
go
Falcon 9 launches. They've
Who cares?
to this point, an interesting tidbit I will just quickly throw in is that they have reached 61 launches, which was their total launch count for 2022, and we are on the 3rd of September 2023. We are 3/4 into the year, and they've already matched the count for 2022.
right.
And that would be 39 more launches this year to reach 100. I don't think they will reach the 100 that they targeted. However, for 2024 and beyond, 100 Falcon 9s a year certainly seems well within reach for SpaceX.
Yeah, and very, very exciting. Man, I'm just thinking back to like when I was first getting into the industry and everything, and 10 launches a year spread out amongst multiple providers. Somebody getting 3 launches in a year was amazing. So when I got in back in around 2008, 2009, United Launch Alliance was kind of the big commercial provider, and a unprecedented year from them would have been 6, at that time. So,
Yeah.
and now it seems like that's what SpaceX does every month. Well, I mean, they're exceeding that rate at this point with that. So, what a workhorse Falcon 9 has become, and I cannot wait to see. I guess maybe we should on the next episode take some bets as to when, or take some bets as to what we think the magic number for Falcon 9 is going to be this year, and we'll have to see. So, yeah, as sedated we is saying, or sedated we is saying, we're 2/3 of the way through the year, so 90, perhaps?
Potentially, yeah. And also on that point, I just brought up the launch history chart for ULA. The most they've ever done in a year was 2009. They launched 16 successful missions in 2009. They're yet to launch Atlas Slick 41 this year. They would have done if the Atlas 5 flew the other week, but they had to pull it back to the vertical integrated facility for the Hurricane. But like you can see here, as ULA has gone down, SpaceX has definitely ticked up, and they've ticked up much faster than ULA have gone down. So it's just an interesting balance there between the different commercial providers. And I guess you could also say, well, Vulcan was occupying Slick 41 for a lot of the year. They're no longer using Vandenberg, really. They've only got a couple more Atlas 5s out of there, if any, I think. So, I mean, that's a fair argument to make, but still, they haven't launched anything yet.
Yeah, it's been a how would I describe it for United Launch Alliance? A lot of their focus this year has not necessarily been on. How do I say this correctly? I'm trying to figure this out because this is I don't want to be like they're not focusing on getting things to orbit this year, because they very clearly are. Right? They've had multiple missions. I mean, they flew a Delta IV Heavy this year, for goodness sake.
They flew the Delta IV Heavy earlier in the year.
It doesn't get much bigger than that, except for Falcon Heavy, which is flown several times here. But they're really focusing on their ground game and getting Vulcan up and going. As Bennett is saying, Vulcan needs to get moving. There are customers, and we've seen those customers move a little bit, right? We saw Kuiper take 2 of their satellites off of Vulcan flight and stick them on an Atlas flight to kind of work with that.
One of the things that SpaceX has going for it is it is its own customer.
Yes.
So they're like developing their own. Okay, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead, Detta. You're going to probably say it much better than I ever could.
No, you try.
Thanks, Detta. No pressure. But when you've got Starlink on your side, it definitely helps out. I could definitely, talk about all the things I've transported in my Jeep this year when it's not broken down. I've transported a lot, but I've also done most of that for myself. So.
But SpaceX has also launched more commercial payloads this year than ULA has. So
yes,
the Starlink does make a big majority of that 61, but they still have launched more commercial payloads than ULA have.
Yeah. I think your fight's with Dutta, not with me. I promise. Dutta's being the bad boy today. So you're going to be the one who's going to get all the angry comments in the comment section, hopefully. So for once in your life, Dutta, now it is your turn. But in our chat room, hey, some of y'all are still checking in today. Hello from Diamond Bar here in California, also from Croatia. Glad to have you aboard with us. And then we've also got some folks who are giving us their predictions of how many launches they think SpaceX are going to do. Alan says 92 this year, so not quite 100, but 92. And then Leo here being slightly mean a little bit, but 99. So yeah, so we'll have to see how that goes. They're gonna get so close to 100, and then just miss it by one. That would be a huge bummer. Heat Shield letting us know that we are 0.673972602739726 of the way through the year. Thanks for all of those significant. Thanks for not going for sig figs on it and just dropping the whole numbers. Even then, I think that's still, a lot of that went out there. Anyways, yeah. So super cool, and we're hoping that we can see SpaceX continue to launch at a very high cadence. I feel like Alan at 92 is definitely kind of right where it's going to end up being. That seems to be the happy medium with that there. And even then, I guess that means you're launching every 3-4 days, roughly.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I mean, that's kind of roughly what
you can do it every 6 days, but you have to do it from both coasts at the same time.
And that's not quite out of the purview of SpaceX's abilities either. They very well could, and so I mean, they've tried to launch from 39 and 40 in the same day from the same area, if you will.
So
two
I want to see the point
places,
where they get to having overlapping webcasts for 2 launches.
They've done that before. Cool. They've already had to do that out of California and Florida. It was I think it was the end of a Falcon Heavy and the start of like a Starlink or something like that. They were like the launches weren't physically happening at the same time, but the tail end of one caught up with the start of another by only by a few minutes though.
Yeah, but I'm talking like we don't get to hear test shot Starfish in between. Like Dutta's doing. I want to see that like what do you call it? Like as one's going through staging, the other one's lifting off. So what's stopping y'all? So come on, let's see it. What are you waiting for? Let's do it, y'all. So, anyways, I don't know. Maybe we should buy one and make that happen. Buy 2.
Yeah, I'll get right on it.
Happen. Yeah, well, I'm sure we can get a discount for flying them at the same time. I'm sure it's not too difficult on there. Yeah, probably. All right. So, quite a lot on SpaceX this week. But I want to tell you a little bit about something that we found on the moon, if you could believe it, which is that a couple weeks ago, we had this thing called Luna 25. You guys remember it?
Mm-hmm.
And I say mostly you guys remember it because we had Luna 25 there for a bit. And then it kind of did this. Which it smacked into the surface of the moon. But we have found where it is on the moon. So Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, they actually were able to discuss it where it is with scientists from Roscosmos, and they got sort of an idea as to where it should be. I actually saw the landing ellipses, the area where Luna 25 was going to land was something like 15 kilometers by 30 kilometers. These are huge landing ellipses for something that's supposed to do a precision landing. So I was really surprised by that. But here's the area that this is what it looked like before Luna 25 showed up, and then this is what it looked like after Luna 25 showed up. And of course, as we know, now the engines on Luna 25 basically
performed really well.
Yeah, they overperformed, whatever that means. Yeah, and boy, did Luna 25 smack into the moon at a very high rate of speed, therefore forming the newest crater on the moon. And it really does actually look like a crater there. So yeah, that's fascinating with that there. And I actually think I don't want to, I'm trying to, I guess, be an optimist about this. But we now have some lunar regolith that is exposed. So if you got a spacecraft that has instrumentation on board, go ahead and, maybe schedule some time to look at that freshly exposed regolith, and let's see what we get out of it. We know that the elements and things that the spacecraft is made out of, so let's just go ahead and get rid of that. But maybe we could figure out what other stuff is made out of there. So, sort of like L-Cross, when we smacked into the moon and then flew through the plume and analyzed the plume as we went in. As our resident Moonabomber, Vax, often we talk with him about that quite often. We might be able to do that here. So very, very, bummer on not being able to land on the moon, but also at the same time, we could pull some results from it. So we'll have to see. So this is kind of one of those things with that there that we end up having to figure out. And Raul is actually asking, what is the name of the new crater on the moon? Don't know. Nobody has proposed one yet. I think it's still too. I think if I were to bring in some technical terms for this from the planetary sciences community, I think this would be deemed too soon to make one. So yeah, we still gotta do it. And then Mikhail, yes, Luna 25 is indeed on the moon, resting in pieces. So R.I.P. homie.
I like this name from Benjamin saying let's call it Oops.
Yes, we could call it Oops. So I don't know if that's not very nice. But the moon is not nice either. So it's a very difficult place to do things, as we have seen. But I don't know if anybody's kind of prepared to talk about it here, but we do have a moon mission that is currently going on that is so far wildly successful in just about everything it's doing. Anybody want to grab that? Which is this little mission called Chandrayaan-3.
Yeah, it's a little mission. I brought up one of the tweets here from the ISRO, or ISRO, who, as I said last week, have been doing an excellent job of keeping everybody informed through social media all around the world. This is a picture from the Vikram rover, which came with the... is it the Pragyan rover? I forgot which one is which. Pragyan's one of them, and Vikram's the other one. There's a rover and a lander. The rover came out of the lander. Whichever way around it is, the rover took a picture of the lander. That's
Vikram, the lander, and then Pragyan's the rover.
Okay, there we go. I had the wrong way around in my head. Yeah, but we got pictures from them from the lunar surface, which was really cool. But if you're unaware, and you're like all of this exciting hoo-ha around Chandrayaan-3, this looks very exciting. And we can see here as well the rover rotation as it spins around on the lunar surface. That looks really cool, right? But it's solar powered.
Look at it
go. The disappointing news is that its mission is very shortly going to come to the end, come to a end at the end of the lunar day.
No.
So Chandrayaan-3 is very soon, unfortunately, going to be lost. There'll be a loss of communications, and the mission will probably come to an end. Israel are going to keep listening out in case they get a heartbeat signal back when the sun rises again on the lunar surface where
No.
Chandrayaan 3 is located. But at least its primary mission has gone incredibly well, much better than Luna 25 did. But it will. This is a planned loss. This is just because it's powered by solar cells which need to be able to see the sun.
No, I don't want it to go away. It's I like it.
They didn't find. They obviously didn't find an outlet in time on the lunar surface in order to charge it up again.
Forgot to bring the plug converter.
Yeah.
I'm suddenly becoming very sad thinking about this. So I don't.
It was a
I
good
don't know how
robot.
to.
It did its job.
Yeah, but it. I want no. I want more.
We all want more. I saw a
Yeah,
stat somewhere that they did this mission for $75 million,
thereabouts. Yeah,
Yeah.
which
it
is
was
what almost half. It's over half than the cost of the movie Interstellar.
yes.
There,
Yes.
there are countless movies that cost more than $100 million, and they've done this for 3/4 of that. So, an incredible bang for your buck from India, and it's
Yeah,
done. It's
fantastic job.
it's done exactly what it was designed to do as well.
Yep. Yeah, I was just going to say that we have already been getting a wealth of data back from Chandrayaan 3. We're getting temperature data both for surface and subsurface, which is like fantastic. It's been it has not been since Apollo that we have gotten subsurface temperature data. So we're very, very excited about that. In addition to that, we're also getting seismic data from the surface. They have both been able to measure the seismicity from Prangyan driving around on the surface, but they did catch one on August 26th. Some event not related to anything on the rover or the lander occurred. So they're trying to figure out if that might have been a meteorite impact or a moonquake. So trying to differentiate between the two there, which a lot of people don't realize. The moon does have seismicity, lunar seismology, I guess. I can't think of a cool terminology for it.
It quivers.
It kind of does, actually. The moon is different from the Earth, where it sort of rings like a bell does. And these moonquakes can actually last minutes, even hours. So they are intense on the moon.
Is it?
They're not very
Is that?
high in what we would consider magnitude here on Earth. I believe the biggest ones they get are up to magnitude 4 or 5 relative to what we have here on Earth. But having us, me and Dutta, just having dealt with a magnitude 5 during a hurricane that visited us a couple weeks ago, we could tell you that having a couple hours of a magnitude 5 would not be very fun. We could definitely shake our drinks very well with it, but it wouldn't be very fun overall.
Does it ring like that because of the lack of a liquid core?
Yes. So because the moon doesn't have a liquid core, because the interior of the moon is radically different, very solid metallic compared to what we have here on Earth. Yes. So that is exactly why it rings like a bell does with that. So. And then Bennett, thank you very much. There's our T-shirt for us here in Los Angeles several weeks ago, which is magnitude 5, category 5. All I got was this T-shirt. So with it there, and then also, let's see. There was a question in our chat room that if anybody wanted to take it on, they could. Benjamin there asking, why wouldn't it just get a charge again and start roving after the lunar night? So why wouldn't it just
My
charge
best
again?
guess is that because it would have already been starved of electricity, it would already be dead. So my best guess is that even if the solar cells worked again, they've already been exposed to the lunar night. It's already been very, very cold. it just wouldn't be enough in order to, kickstart the rover or the lander into working again. They've already gone into hibernation mode to anticipate the lunar night. So, if they've already been put into a hibernation mode, I severely doubt it would be easy just to, click a button and it would just spring out of hibernation mode again, because you need to establish communications to talk to the rover in order to do that. And if you've run out of electricity, you can't do that because you don't have electricity and you can't get signal. So that would be my best guess. It's just because it has already lost power, it would be impossible to, jumpstart it.
Yeah, and I haven't been able to figure out. I haven't seen anything talking about a heater or heaters being on board of Pragyan as well. And that's going to be really important because we're talking about this being down near the lunar south pole. So we're going to be talking about temperatures probably near, minus 200 Fahrenheit, which I assume would be somewhere well below minus 100 Celsius, probably minus 140 Celsius, something like that. It would be
minus
very cold.
128.8 Celsius, there you go.
108?
Minus 128.8 Celsius, so very cold. And as Dan said in the chat, when batteries freeze, they don't like coming back to life, which is a good point to make.
Yeah, so if you were to take your Tesla to the North or South Pole during their winters, respectively, it may not start after that. Not really big on working with that. So, and there will be nobody there to pull your Cybertruck out either. So, how terrible!
Turns out electronics have an operating range.
Yes, they do, and a lot of people don't realize this. The Mars exploration rovers, Opportunity and Spirit, they had heaters on board, but they were actually made out of radioactive material. I can't remember which specifically. I can't remember if it was plutonium-238 or 35, or if they used something else different from it. But they actually did have that there because they did have actual heaters on board to keep them warm during the Martian night. But they also wanted something a little extra to help out. And they actually did have radioactive materials that gave heat off to keep the electronics warm throughout a Martian night. So, yeah, you really do have to keep your electronics nice and warm with that. You'll notice that, like, if you look at the designs of spacecraft, like Cassini, so Cassini had to go through the inner solar system before it got out to Saturn. So if you look at the design of Cassini, there's these big radiators in the body of it that allow it to dump heat overboard. But once they got past Mars's orbit, those radiators closed up and they never opened again because they needed to keep as much heat inside of the spacecraft as they could to keep it warm. Because as you can imagine, going out as far as Cassini did, which is basically Saturn's orbit, you did end up losing a lot of heat very easily. By the way, Cassini is huge. A side note here, it's absolutely massive. If you ever go to the California Science Center here in Los Angeles, they have a scale model of Cassini hanging from the ceiling. It's huge. It's like the size of it's like a truck and a half, the body of it. And then that boom, those magnetometers coming off of it there are like city bus size in length. It's gigantic, it's huge, and I love it. So, and every time I watch the video about Cassini plunging into the atmosphere and they go, as it fights to hold its antenna at Earth, I start to cry because I'm like, oh, it's trying so hard. This is how I feel now about Chandrayaan-3 and this is how I feel about Vikram and Pragyan. I'm feeling sad now because they're fighting so hard to do their work. But they have to kind of work with it.
As all good robots do.
Yeah. Eventually they do. So you weren't just a good robot. You were the goodest. Powell, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, Powell, is asking, so the heaters are too heavy for that. So not necessarily, but the heaters need to do their job, and they need to be able to do it efficiently. And there are interesting ways that we can work with that. And then TSM Space, I like this one here, which sounds like a job for a satellite with a laser to shoot at it. Yeah, I was just about to say laser. Yeah, and we shall call this system to heat up our spacecraft and recharge their batteries the Alan Parsons Project. So, sorry, I'm reading the chat room just because you guys are like jumping in here, and this is exactly what we want. Which Heat Shield coming in saying robots good, Cassini the goodest. And yes, R.I.P. Cassini, you're a part of Saturn now. We love you. We won't forget you. Dan saying, I want a radioactive heating blanket, a Christmas present for the mother-in-law. Be nice, Dan. And Jason's also saying, now I'm wondering what's the torsion forces over the rover, given one side is in direct sunlight and the other is in shadow. I shall point to Dutta to answer something as smart as that. Dutta.
I'm not doing physics questions this early in the morning.
Okay, fair enough. I'm not sure what those forces would be either, but obviously you've got to build for them because the it's not going to be big. You probably will want to build a little bit for it, maybe for the like thermal covering on it, so that doesn't split or something like that. Because it's very thin sheets typically. But even then, I don't know if it's going to be much. But yeah, but that is something that you do have to think about in designing stuff to operate on the lunar surface, which is that if you're going to be in sunlight, you're going to be in excess of 100 degrees Celsius, well over 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And then in the shade, you're going to be dropping down to probably about minus 100 Celsius, or below 200 degrees, minus 200 Fahrenheit. Yeah.
This is true. One side is shrinking, the other is expanding with the heat.
Yeah, so what you need to do, have your rover go in little circles, just do little donuts across the moon.
That's what it was doing.
As you go around. So yeah, and it was kind of working with it. Yeah, and actually, Heat Shield. Heat Shield, I'm not doing physics questions before my first cup of coffee. Okay, that's the new coffee mug logo, so I guess there's our coffee mug for the show. And then Benjamin saying, considering these extreme temperatures and the electronics working ranges, there's a lot of challenges to overcome if we want to go back for any longer period of time. Absolutely. So now you know why things like lunar spacesuits and other stuff cost, $1 billion to make 6 to 8 of them. It's because this is not an easy thing to do. You're in a difficult environment. This is an environment that hates and will attempt to destroy everything that you put in it, that you do to operate it. Yeah. So
razor sharp dust.
Easy. Yeah, razor sharp dust. And Mikhail, totally agree with you here. If we want to go back for a longer period of time, we need to bring back Ares 1X. So,
oh god, I fell for that one.
Full send. Thanks, Dutta. I got you on that one. So thank you, Mikhail. I appreciate that. With that, myself and Ryan, I appreciate that. Don't worry, I'm sure Starship will finally be Ares 1X.
Yes.
On this next flight. Oh boy, yeah, Jason, exactly. Ares 1X would lift off of the lunar night, no problem. Piece of cake. That's how it goes. Leo actually bringing up a really interesting question here, which is, have any of the agencies tried using secondary batteries like ultracapacitors or inertial masses to overcome this problem? I actually don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. So I would think things like capacitors, the more charge you dump into something, the faster you charge something, the more heat you generate. And typically the more heat you generate, the not good it is to be in a spacecraft. So I would imagine, so we're not going to have a Formula One style kinetic energy recovery system in like our next Perseverance rover. They're trying to make sure Verstappen doesn't pass you, so you quickly push it and get it there. So, but of course, he's still going to win even on Mars. Yeah, that's how it goes. Oh, Bennett, I don't want to bring that one up. That's funny, but it's also mean with it there. And then, yeah, anyways, yeah, that's how it goes. But also, I just want to remind everybody that we're not done with the moon yet. We still got a little bit more coming up with the moon, which is that JAXA has their own vehicle, their own lander that they've actually developed. And give me just a second. I'm pulling it up right now. Still getting used to EV Mux even after all this time, which is called SLIM. And SLIM is the smart lander for investigating the moon. This is a very cool little mission that they're going to be doing. They're basically trying to make sure, or they're going to be testing out systems for landing on the moon. And I think this is fascinating because instead of doing the typical thing with like inertial navigation units and all this other stuff to try to figure out how to land super precisely on the moon, they are literally using a facial recognition software to try to do a landing on the moon within 100 meters of a target that they're going to choose. So that's so ridiculous. I love it. That's amazing. And it's got a thermometer to take thermal data, temperature data on the surface of the moon. It's got a radiation monitor in order to measure radiation. Very important thing if we're going to have humans returning to the moon, like Artemis is trying to get us to do. And especially if we're trying to get humans to go back to the moon to stay. We want to know the radiation environment as well as we can. It's also going to have an inclinometer. Oh my gosh. Dada, help me.
Inclinometer.
Thank you, inclinometer. Which, for those of you who may not be in the 4x4 world, or you're going to buy a Cybertruck and you very quickly need to learn what one of these is because you'll get it stuck without it.
It tells you how many inclims you have.
Yes, it tells you what angle you're laying at. So, like, how much roll, pitch do you have, other stuff like that. Although in a car, we don't necessarily call it roll or pitch. We just say what angle are you facing, up or down or to the right or to the left? Because if you are saying, like, my Toyota 4Runner, the inclinometer currently showing that I have 20 plus 25 degrees roll, we're all just going to call you a dork with that there. It will also have a very small little rover, which weighs about 250 grams, so literally a quarter of a kilogram, and it's got a couple cameras on board, and it's actually designed to change its shape on the lunar surface. This is how SLIM is going to sit on the surface once it lands on the surface. That kind of blows my mind that it's going to sort of like tip itself over during the landing process and come in that way, because you see it like this, right? Because you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. There's the thrusters, and there's the larger engines to slow down, and then the very small thrusters to do very fine movements. And the next thing you see, it's like, wait a second, everything is that's all pointing the wrong way. But this is going to launch as a secondary payload during the X-ray imaging and spectroscopy mission. Which is supposed to launch on August 28th, but it has been delayed, unfortunately, and there is currently not a specified date, but it was delayed because of poor weather at the launch site. But yeah, so I'm very excited to see that. So and I cannot wait for that one. So the moon, it's so hot right now. It's hot moon summer, I think. So
do you want to know what's also hot?
What's also hot?
The sun.
That's true.
Yeah, it's true. Do you want to know? Do you want to know who's going to look at the sun?
I think I know where we're going with this. So yeah, who's going to go?
Because because
So
not
first of
only
all,
have they landed on the moon, but Israel have also decided, you know what? Why don't we also go and launch a solar observatory at the same time? So, pretty well, not really out of nowhere. They haven't just decided this. Obviously, they decided this a long while ago while they were designing the mission. But very recently, Israel have launched a PSLV, a Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, out of India to launch the Aditya L1 mission, which is kind of in the name. It's currently on its way to Lagrange point 1, which is the opposite point to L2, where the James Webb Space Telescope is. So if you think of, is it here? There you go. So if you think of Earth, you have the moon. L2 is back here, because that's where James Webb went, because it doesn't want to look at the sun, because the sun's hot, and you don't want James Webb to be hot. However, Aditya L1 wants to look at the sun, so you put it on the other side, you put it at the Lagrange point 1, which is between the Earth and the sun. It's kind of the midpoint between, if you think of the sun's mass and the Earth's mass, it's kind of the midpoint where they kind of equalize, and you can do all kinds of cool physicsy stuff at Lagrange points, and it gets a little bit confusing. But anyway, essentially, it's a point in space which it can orbit around, but there isn't actually anything there which it's orbiting around. It's just because of how gravity works. You can probably do your own research on that, because I can't explain it very well. But anyway, it's currently on its way to L1, and it's going to be observing the sun and getting sun stuff and doing all of kind of things to do with that. It's not getting as close as, say, Parker Solar Probe, which has literally touched the sun. However, it will be doing solar observations. Kind of. I don't know whether this is a certainty, but if you kind of think of like the Solar Dynamics Observatory, SDO, which kind of just looks at the sun, I imagine it'll be doing similar things to that, except at the L1 point.
yeah, I think it and Discover, which is the mission that we launched in 2015, are going to be very complementary of each other in working with that. There's also ACE, Advanced Composition Explorer, which a lot of people don't know about at L1 as well. And ACE has been operating since 1997. We're still using it. So 26 years later, we are still operating a mission to study the sun at L1. So you want to talk about continuity of data coming from the sun. Doesn't get much more potent than that. There's also SOHO at L1, right? I think I think it's still there. It's still there and operating correctly. I think that's been there since 2000. I want to say either like 99 or 2000 is when it rolled up on the scene, sometime around there.
I'm looking. The launch date was 1995, and it's currently there.
Holy smokes!
Yeah, its planned mission duration was 2 years, and the last time this page was updated, it had been going for just over 27 years and 9 months, which is significantly longer than the intended mission duration. Oh, look at this! You can get an animation of its trajectory. What it's doing.
Whee! And there it is. It just does these really big loops. So, just like around the holidays, when I have my favorite drink, I do really big loops. On my legs, thank you. So Benjamin is actually asking, I think, a really cool question that a lot of people think about but never ask the question of, and I think it's a great question, Benjamin, which is how many objects sit at these Lagrange points? It seems we send a lot of missions there, but they never seem to interfere with each other. Yes, the distances are huge, but they're still not impossible. How do they not interfere with each other?
My best guess is that, well, this is how I understand it. Please interrupt me if I'm wrong, but they're not actually at the Lagrange point. They are orbiting around the Lagrange point. And just like how on Earth, or rather around Earth, we can have thousands of Starlink satellites, you can have TDRS satellites, you can have Iridium satellites, you can have space telescopes, you can have thousands upon thousands of satellites orbiting around Earth that very rarely crash into each other. We can have satellites
Tesla
and different...
Roadsters.
That's not orbiting around Earth, that's orbiting around the sun. But just like we can have thousands of things orbiting around Earth, we can have many different things orbiting around Lagrange points, and they won't interfere with each other because they're all in their own orbits. Now, obviously, a collision could be possible if you send two things heading in a collision path, but I'm pretty sure that you try and not do that when you've spent billions of dollars on the James Webb Space Telescope. You want it to be as much as out of the way as possible.
Yeah, except for when the dust environment is a bit more than we were expecting, and it gets nicked a few times. Yeah, there is that. I will say this as well, Benjamin, which is that the Deep Space Network, which is pretty much the primary network that communications is done with our spacecraft throughout the solar system, especially those beyond low Earth orbit. We're talking moon and further out. They do tracking on these spacecraft. So when they're getting communications or communicating to the spacecraft, they're not only just downloading data or uploading data to the spacecraft to stay in communications with them, they're also figuring out exactly precisely where they are in space as well. And that is very handy for figuring out precisely where spacecraft are at. And that's something that we don't necessarily do just with stuff at the Lagrange points. We could do it with spacecraft throughout the solar system. So we can get very precise locations from them. So that's how we are able to do it. Like Ryan said, being able to do it that way, also grabbing data from the Deep Space Network or any communication system that you may have and working with it, with that there. So yes, it's don't think it's an easy task though. It's very, very difficult. So yeah, it's really, really tough. And I think on that note, that's actually a good time for us to wrap up. We are going to have our members only show after this. So if you have any questions that you didn't quite get answered, and you still want to ask them, consider becoming a member of Tomorrow like these folks have. You can go to youtube.com/TMRO/join in order to become a member. It is literally 99 cents a month or more. You could start at 99 cents. That's like a quarter cup of coffee. So consider becoming a member, and then you could join us in our members only show. It's instant. That means if you become a member right now, you will be allowed to come in to the members only show. So highly recommend that you come on down and join us for that there. And this, of course, we want to thank our NeuroStream, our Tomorrow Model 33 Plaid Pro Plus Edition member. Boy, that was a fun post-show stream when we came up with that. And of course, thank you all so much. That we can't do this show without you. We're so excited that you help us out to make this show come over to everybody who wants to watch it. So consider helping us out, making this show possible with all of us here. So on behalf of the three of us here, we appreciate it. As Bennett says, $1, just like shots. Just like shots on a Thursday special night or something at your local place. Yeah, baby. That's kind of how tomorrow is. Much like shots, you get sick of it by the end of it, I'm sure. No, I'm just kidding. You probably enjoy the show. If you're this far, you definitely enjoy it. But thank you, everybody. We're going to go ahead and head over to our members-only stream now. We'll be seeing you next week. Bye, everybody.